Welcome, everyone. I am Emily Zayden. I am the director of the Craft in America Center in Los Angeles. Thank you all for joining us today for the latest installment of our Reading Craft series. We are so happy to have with us today Ezra Shales, professor of art history at Massachusetts College of Art and Design. Ezra is going to be talking today about his book, Pictures of American Life, Art Within Reach. We're so thrilled to get this insider look at the content of what you put together. The topics are so groundbreaking, I think, and there's going to be a lot to discuss. After Ezra finishes sharing his presentation, we'll open up for questions and conversation. And also feel free to type any questions into the chat that Ezra can address after he finishes presenting. With that, thank you so much for being with us today and excited to hear more.
Well, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone out there. Today, I will be presenting my book, which is all about touching things, and so I'll be touching things, some of the things behind me. But ideally, I'd be passing this out to you, and you'd have a similar kind of experience. I'll start with the subtitle of my book, but I look forward to questions and comments and yeah. The subtitle is Art Within Reach, and that's really kind of runs counter to most of what we think about when we're told or taught art. Most of us go into a museum and the signs are quite prominent. Do not touch, hands with the red slash sign. So art within reach is a paradox or a contradiction for many people. Both religions and museums suggest to touch things in some ways defiles them or brings them down to the everyday level. And that is one way that people view altar paintings in general. And so this title, Art Within Reach, is something of an institutional critique of how we teach art and look at art and are taught to revere art, and also a provocation. In many ways, what I'm doing here is opening up my cupboard and saying, you can go home and open up your cupboard and you can kind of find art history there, in terms of things which are within reach, things which you revere, in everyday things that you might use and connect to in terms of a sensual way, a spiritual way, a familial kind of inheritance sort of way. And I will say that the book began in I wrote this, started a long time ago in almost 15 years ago, and it was a book about communal drinking vessels. Then COVID happened, and people didn't really want to share communal drinking vessels. So you have to change your tact with the breeze, and I moved towards the pitcher, and towards this notion of the pitcher because it is a communal, collective drinking device. I might not be able to get anyone to actually pass a vessel and share it anymore in our germophobic era, but I think that the shape of the pitcher, and when you go into a room and you see the portion size of a pitcher, that it's more than an individual portion, it is for a collective feast, it is for a collective gathering. There's something very magical about that, which I try and convey, and through words, even though it's better conveyed through presence and touch. And I think that we go into many displays of cups or chairs, and those are all individual ways of enjoying decorative arts, design, craft, art, however you want to think about it. But there are things like benches or quilts made for large double beds, or pictures, which give this sense of collective engagement. Um, so uh, the book is about art within reach, putting these vessels within reach, um, and it is not in some ways a kind of a traditional art history book. Art history is usually written in regards to other art history, and I kind of think of this as art history that's about everyday life, getting you to look into your own cupboard. Um, so let's look at some pictures, and then we will have some conversation too. And of course, when I say let's look at some pictures, the pun of my book, in terms of the main title, Pictures of American Life, should be somewhat relevant or obvious here to you when I show you that this book, in many ways, is full of photographs that I took of paper, cardboard, or cardstock pictures. This might be from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Uh, this might be from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And I've cut them out, and here I've asked this couple on a date at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston to hold these up. This was part of my idea of it comes out of teaching how to get objects which are usually stuck behind glass in vitrines alive and feel dynamic. And so here, this is what you're looking at is a jug, a pitcher made up in by the United States Pottery Company in Bennington, Vermont. Um, there's two different glazes, two different bodies of clay. We can talk more about that in terms of Q&A. It's thought to be made by an English immigrant, Daniel Greatbatch, up in Vermont, and it's considered one of the early original designs to could be made in America at around 1850. And then, of course, what's behind these paper cutouts and these living people's hands is a painting by George Inness, Blue Niagara. So the theme of the jug is water, water power, nature, waterfalls. People call it the Cascade jug. And you can see it as a celebration of nature, but you can also, as Niagara Falls was seen in the 19th century, see it as an emblem of power and of water power. So there are 12 different chapters in this book, which I call time capsules. And what I'm really trying to do is bring these objects alive by recontextualizing them, but also by revivifying them almost, bringing them back to life, and certainly bringing them out of the plexiglass in which they're often found in museums. Um, so there's a bit of play there. There's a bit of thrill, and here I did the same thing on the left. You're seeing pre-contact, formerly it would be called Anasazi jug or mug. And on the right is one of the earliest versions of what I did, cutting this out and holding it in front of my screen and putting it in a way back in Chaco Canyon. So I also have drawings in this book that I made myself. The art historian Leo Steinberg encouraged me to draw. He said he always drew as he studied or drew as a way to study, kind of that whole making and thinking dialectic being pretty bound together. And so I kind of tried to do the same. The book brings together many different interests of mine, and those 12 different time capsules, they run a range. You might not think of this as American in terms of pictures of American life and not fitting the title of the book, but there's also different kind of Peruvian objects. I'm holding one up now in my little cubicle on screen, a digital cubicle, I guess we can call it. And here you can see this is actually another strand of my life as a consumer. I bought this torn out engraving in about 1996, 7, um, at a flea market, and it's it's from a 1766 publication. I went to graduate same book that this is from. Um, this this object remained kind of unknown to me, unclear in terms of its provenance until writing this book. So to have something in your possession from 25 years later, being a way to access it, ruminate over it, was fascinating and fun. This is an image that was widely influential. It is a publication that circulated across Europe, and it here I'm showing you the print, and as well as there's an actual jug that it's based on that's in the British Museum, um, and it's got these drawn elements that are so careful. This is a blueprint for a picture. So in some ways, the book gets into this relationship and question between collage and cutouts and drawing and different ways of studying these objects, whether it's hands-on or whether it's somewhat filtered through these lenses of photography, drawing, and reproduction. But mostly we see really exciting jugs in museums like this. And here are some jugs inside the Museum of Modern Art. They might be the only jugs on display at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and they're kind of hard to connect with when they're behind plexiglass. So I grew up knowing a curator and a sculptor who kind of opened my eyes to many of these objects. They also opened their apartment to me, and so here's an image of their apartment and of this other object I write about in the book. This is not as old as that 1,000-year-old Chaco jug, but this kind of double spout and bridge or whistling jug is really representative of forms made in Peru by the Chimu people. The Moche also made objects like this. And many people in the United States might not think of this as American history as well. Like the Etruscan jug that was circulated on paper across America, I think these were very influential and very important. These entered the Metropolitan Museum of Art as musical instruments back in the 1870s, and several were on display. And they're interesting to me because they are rarely seen as sculpture, but they are very sculptural. They are very abstract, as well as being representative of this animal head, as well as being instruments, tools. We don't know exactly how they sounded or how they worked. But what really interests me about these objects is how they break those definitions of craft, design, art, and pull us into more complex areas of thought. So the double spout and bridge or whistling jug that you see is one of many things that I try and revitalize. And here are some of the themes of the book. Uh, if play is one theme with the paper cutouts and asking museum guards and strangers to kind of hold up these objects, I also engage in a kind of tactile reverie where I really have respect for workmanship. Uh, and many of the objects that you're going to see, like this Cascade jug, and even that, let me just go back, see if I can, yeah, this Chimu jug, these are molded objects. You can see the raised dots there. Um, uh, and molded objects suggest that they were not unique. So many things in this book are about mass produced or at least serial batch produced objects, and respecting how they were made, and respecting how they were trying to connect with a larger group of people than simply a unique object. Oftentimes, many of those jugs are presented, even this Cascade jug is presented as a unique object inside a museum because there's only one. And if you saw the variations on the theme, you can see how inventive humans have been. So a lot of what's mass produced is also considered, you know, uh, because it's not unique. This is similar to because we can touch it, it's not art. Because it's not unique, it's not art in many people's eyes. And that's not true for me. So recuperating, salvaging these things, and oftentimes buying them on eBay when they were once revered or considered art is part of the interesting process of the book for me. Uh, these objects also can be seen as emblems of order and disorder. So the Cascade jug can suggest nature to you today. But as I said, it also might suggest industrialization or harnessing Niagara Falls or the Geneseo Falls in upstate New York and Rochester or Patterson Falls in New Jersey to make cloth, to power machinery. So if you look at this as someone might in the 1880s, they might see harnessing nature, not nature untouched. And that's an interesting question and theme also that I'll explore in terms of domestic furnishings, whether those shift our perception when they're in the home. And lastly, I'd say the strongest theme is empathy for the past, reverence for the everyday. So you can put your cheek or your lips against one of these jugs and drink from it, and think thousands of people have done that before. Maybe drinking from an old vessel is connecting with the past. For some people, it might seem dirty or cracked, and they might worry about things like that. For me, in some ways, this is a kind of the wonderful way in which history is a kind of a salve, and the way the history in an object like this can make you feel, as the ocean can, that you're connecting with this larger tides of humanity. In terms of commodities, this is I think, slightly amusing picture I made of a picture in the Yale University Art Gallery. Hiram Powers was a Vermont-born sculptor who ended up in Rome making America's first internationally famous sculpture, the Greek slave, a statue carved in marble by some hired craftspeople in Rome. Yale has one of the six versions of this Greek slave, and they have the a jug that is actually the only known jug that is a molded creamware jug. It might have been made in England, it probably was made in America. It's got this lovely splattered Rockingham glaze on it, which tobacco cuspidors and lots of um, tea, not kettles. You get the idea. Tea. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but spotted and mottled so that you won't see stains of tobacco or coffee or tea. Um, uh, but it's kind of amazing that this object becomes a commodity, becomes mass produced on some level, six versions going around, as well as smaller statues, Parian ceramics, molded versions of it, lots of miniatures of this work of art. Uh, and again, this is one of the themes of art history. In art history, most of us go into a room or look at a book and look at things in Europe far away, or in Africa, or in anywhere else in the world. Um, and this suggests in some ways that touching these objects and reaching for something closer at hand is just as valid, right? Art history has been looking at reproductions and copies and slides for time immemorial. So why do we have this hang up about original versus reproduction? And there you can also see a tobacco container that's not in the Yale University art collection, but it could be one day. So in many ways, as this Pogo cartoon suggests, uh, um, we have these class distinctions in art history, and often art history is really a story about taste. And often I feel like I am presenting middle class objects um, to people and saying, "This too is your culture." But often I think that I hear in my head or see in the eyes of my audience someone saying, "Begone, churl, off with your parasitical proletarian vulgarities." I like this cartoon, of course, because it puts the person saying that they're holding a jug. Um, in terms of jugs we do revere, over the past 25 years, the objects like this pitcher have escalated in value because they are so rich and so full of history. And it's, rightly so, the work of Dave Drake, former an enslaved potter in South Carolina, um, was once unknown for most of the 20th century or unacknowledged. And only at the end of the 20th century was his work recaptured as a kind of valuable talisman. To be fair, probably very few people ever saw these because they were storage jars. They were not in the front parlors of houses. They were in the back rooms of houses. So they weren't displayed the way some of like the Greek slave picture might have been. But the David Drake's pot here is fantastic. This jug actually says Lewis Miles says this handle will crack, and you can see he's taken a nail and inscribed that. LM says this handle will crack, and dated it. So if a ceramic object is an amazing diagnostic of time, and kind of shards are things we dig up that archaeologists dig up in order to figure out what was when and what happened when. This is fascinating because this object is actually shows an enslaved person making fun of their owner or speaking back to their owner, and also being literate, being playful himself, and kind of almost using his labor to evade his bondage in a sense, or transcend it in terms of power relations. So there are jugs like this that we do revere. Uh, this is a David Drake pot as well. It's not signed. Most of the David Drake pots that are deemed incredibly valuable are written on and have his poetry on it. Um, uh, this one is cracked, has this patina of use. And this is a slide just to suggest that, that patina of use is another way to kind of connect to time past, and also to time past when people cherished objects and might have spent more fixing objects or spent time fixing objects, spent more investment on that than going out and buying a new one. Sometimes it might have been repaired out of need, and I think the Dave Drake pot, that jug with its wired handle, was probably, made out of need and out of want. But some of these were fixed because people did enjoy them, and that's certainly true of this jug. I just had that on the previous slide where you can see that those staples and that mend, and you can see what I'm pointing to in my little digital cubicle. I'm going to use that phrase from now on. This jug by Charles May is one that you'll see you can find on the Victoria and Albert Museum. But instead of showing the patina of use, or one that is cracked and been repaired lovingly, what we usually find on museum sites are the pristine ones. I love the fact that I could buy this on eBay for $40 when it was once exhibited at the 1851 World's Fair. You can see it in that lower corner of the screen. There's a little engraving of it that appeared in a printed catalog. And in some ways, it's great that I could buy it for $40. In some ways, it's crazy that this complex, maybe 12-part plaster molded object, which was celebrated in its day, uh, is a discarded object today, right? So the art that is tossed from the past into the past into the waste bin, should we rescue it? And what might it mean? What does it signify? What messages did this send to the people in its day? Uh, this company made many different versions and variations of these objects. They scaled them large and small. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about respect for workmanship. If you look at that strap handle, you can see the same bearded face, large and small. You can see this is a different May jug called the 12 Apostles jug, but of course you can find the large version which has no apostles and only windows. So scaling these up, scaling these down was quite a skill. There was a reducing machine and calipers that were used, um, and and, uh, and these are pretty remarkable. These Victorian jugs are often looked at as kind of gimmicks and also as sentimental and cliche today. I find them wonderfully curious and interesting. They're kind of like our themed restaurants that we still live in today, or inhabit or use or find in our wanderings. And here you can see on this on the Minster jug, which I just showed you a minute ago, uh, the handle in great detail. The handle is almost like a um, um, the tracery is almost like an architectural tracery, and that trefoil thumb rest, and you would of course use the jug by sticking your hand through the window rather curiously, which is a strange way to hold the jug. Uh, and the range of these jugs suggests that one could be a grapevine, one could be a hand there holding on to what is a horse's tail, the blue one. And all of these jugs were described in the art journals of the day, because they were patented, they were registered as technological objects and also as artistic achievements. So often they took engravings, translated them into form, three-dimensional form, and often they were marked as published or actually registered. Uh, so the stories on these jugs are interesting in terms of the Tam O'Shanter blue jug, the Raphael mother and child on the right. But in many ways, after writing this book, I realized that and this is the only, this is the reason you write books, is to have this journey of kind of self-discovery and recovery. I kind of began the book with this Chypriot skyphos, which you see, and the then I end the book with this Rubbermaid jug, which you see behind me here. Um, and in many ways, these are this beginning and end very much grounds the book in terms of a personal um, journey of sorts. The Chypriot skyphos was a wedding present that my parents received from my uncle, and I looked at it, and it was up high, and I kind of thought that was a kind of creepy facial resemblance, um, in terms of the markings on it. Whereas the Rubbermaid jug I used every day, or every other day at least, to mix my orange juice concentrate, and to um, you know go from the refrigerator to the breakfast table. in the kitchen. So that uh, these are both rituals, and they're interesting ritual objects to think about as ritual objects, not just as one being useful and one being art. They both were art. They both were important to me. Uh, when no one was home, I kind of pulled this little wobbly black plastic stool over and kind of climbed up to touch this object because I thought it was so magical, beguiling, slightly sinister, but really interesting and beautiful. It was the oldest thing in the house, and it had this kind of charm. In terms of writing the book, when writing the book, I realized this too had an interesting history, and we often overlook Cyprus. We know we study the history of Greece, we study the history of Egypt, and here's an object made in Cyprus that kind of shows those circles overlapping culturally, because you have this beautiful Egyptian lotus leaf motif drawn on the midriff of this skyphos. Um, and so here, this is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art today. It was interesting for me to find these things again having great value at a certain point and then dipping down. And the question for me is, is art history going to be about taste always and kind of about these trajectories of taste? Um, uh, in some ways to shift away from the traditional narrow vein, lens of or range of what is fine art, paintings and sculpture. Um, Here, drinking vessels give us an avenue into a broader range of human experience, a broader sense of time, right? And that's a really ridiculous collage I made of an image of orange, a massive orange display made out of oranges at the Columbian Exposition of 1893, suggesting plenty and this sense of America as a cornucopia. And next to this Rubbermaid jug, which of course the orange, in some ways I think signified the juice. Um, Recovering the history of that Rubbermaid object was fun. It too is a patented object. It too can be seen as sculptural, and its geometry as kind of uh, beautiful. It too has a kind of larger context that you can place it in. So there's other patented plastic objects made from between 1965 and today, in which to locate the straining top lid, um, and locate it. Um, and I might skip these now, but one of these is made by a much more famous industrial designer, Christopher Dresser. It is in many museums. And then the other piece of pottery is a jug made in Clifton, New Jersey. One is evoking the Roman Samian ware, and you can see this Roman inspired object behind me. And the other is looking to Native American history. And I think that using vessels as ways to evoke the past is something self-consciously to try and connect with different histories is a fascinating way that humans have. It's a fascinating theme and a recurrent theme that I do in the book, and then the objects do as well. So here you see an ethnographic report that this object was inspired by. So again, an actual mass-produced jug inspired by a two-dimensional representation. And at the time, these jugs were written about as being exact reproductions of Aboriginal pottery, but of course they're not today. I thought I had a funny prop here, and here it is. One of the most fun in terms of objects to recover and rediscover was this Daniel O'Connell jug. And it looks back at me, and I looked back at it for a long time before I wrote about it. And It's in the Yale University of Art Gallery, and I'm appreciative of John Stewart Gordon, the curator, for actually thinking my image taking and image games were not heretical of the original objects, or didn't break them. There is John holding the jug in storage. This Daniel O'Connell jug was a fun to discover because I don't know how many people in the audience know who Daniel O'Connell was, but he was considered he was called the Great Liberator of Ireland. He was considered to be the man who might pull Ireland out of its um, uh, subservient role to England. England had kind of taken over Ireland in the 18th century, and O'Connell was elected to Parliament, and they had to break the rules of that an Irishman could be a member of Parliament for him. So O'Connell held these monster meetings in Ireland, rousing political speeches given to tens of thousands of people on just without megaphones, without without audio enhancement, as we might call it today, on public hillocks like the Hill of Tara. Um, and O'Connell is incredible because he uh, uh, could make these great pronouncements. I am the friend of liberty in every clime, class, and color. My sympathy with distress is not confined within the narrow bounds of my own green island. So wrote O'Connell to the Irish in America, saying, "You must support the abolitionist movement." And O'Connell was an interesting discovery for me because I didn't know his history. This man who was once so recognizable that Queen Victoria said, "Oh," after meeting him for the first time, she said, "Oh, he has a nice little kind face, and he looks just like his caricatures, which I've seen of him." So this was once an everyday face that was a celebrity face that was known every day to everyone, and it was fun for me to reconnect with such histories and kind of find the very many different incarnations of Daniel O'Connell that are out there. So once again, these are my themes. We can talk about themes. We can talk about individual objects. Um, I'm always happy to bring my dog and pony show and repeat this for other audiences anywhere who want to actually touch the objects. Um, uh, but just to recap, I don't need to recap and read these. Um, but just to recap, the jug is this kind of fundamental technology. And I really want us to see it as a kind of social technology that reminds us what social engagement can be. Um, uh, uh, and what participation is. We go to houses and we expect the refrigerator to be loaded with Diet Pepsi for Johnny and I don't know, Pepsi for Sam, and Ian likes Coke. Um, but it, in previous eras, the whole idea of sharing a common drink was that kind of collective bond of sociability. Um, so these everyday domestic furnishings can provide a kind of a connection to the past. They can connect us to our own past and ways to discover and remember our own childhood homes. Um, um, yeah, so kind of physicalizing all of these interesting emotional ideas, as well as disparate objects we might have in our home. So the book is again, it's not a theoretical art history book. It's an activity book in a sense. It ends with this image, cut it out, suggesting you too could make your own paper cutouts. You too could connect with your own cupboard and get it to mean different things. So I look forward to questions. Um, and I thank you. And I'll open the floor up. I think we're doing okay on time. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Ezra. That was a fantastic overview of a really dense and thoughtful publication. Um, I wanted to start, anyone is welcome to type questions in the chat. I see we're starting to get a few there. I just wanted to start with a question as far as behind the scenes, because your photography, this concept is so key to the book. But do you have any stories about how you staged these? What your thoughts, how you got about creating all of these images, and then I imagine there's probably some funny stories in the mix. You mentioned the Met, that image with a couple, but whose hands are represented and or how you actually were able to take these images.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are funny stories. In some ways, the book is something was something of an experience to make. Uh, Sometimes I have to thank my family. They persevered with me. Some of the hands are my family members. Some students, some colleagues, and then some strangers. And That depended on where I was and who I was with. And I did love. I absolutely loved it when museum guards felt like they were participating in playfulness, and kind of um, and also being treated as a kind of as colleagues, I guess. So that was wonderful to me. Uh, some museum guards are more persnickety, and sometimes managers came down and said, "You can't do this" to their employees, unfortunately. But 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 it was a lot of fun to do it. And I will say though, the book, the writing came after or with the image making and collaging and drawing, um, instead of being made afterwards to illustrate the idea. They are the idea in a sense. You can flip through the book and get the idea, I think. Um, yeah. Yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah. I hope that answers it somewhat.
That's great. I'll start. Carrie Quick asks, first of all, in recent years, we've seen objects and practices traditionally categorized as craft increasingly embraced by the fine art world, appearing, sorry, biennials, etc. What do you think is gained and what is lost when these works are relabeled as art rather than craft? I would add design to that as well. What do you hope will happen by arguing these pictures are art?
I mean, I think that in different cultures we use different words, and the words in our culture we have mega trends, where these words rise and fall in terms of value. Um, so I started my research writing about the industrial arts and commercial arts. These are terms that people used in 1900, 1920. No one calls sculpture the plastic arts anymore. Um, so there are all these terms which have been abandoned, which are lovely, and kind of an eye-opening. I would argue that for all of contemporary arts, infatuation, perhaps recent infatuation with ceramic and textile, um, that in many ways, functional objects are still totally mistreated, or demeaned, or considered, beneath the kind of the honorific of art. So I think I'm honoring the everyday more than I think I'm actually calling craft or design art. Um, I think but it's these are arguments that people have continually. We all have our own baggage and our own kind of histories and kind of trajectories of what we appreciated first or what we learned to love first. And in some ways, um, I would say I might have it all backwards in terms of my personal story. I was taught to revere contemporary art, and then only slowly like appreciated the complexities of real qualities of craftsperson, workmanship, craftsmanship, whatever we want to call it. Um, uh, but I would say that there are many craftspeople who don't appreciate anonymous objects too. So we have a lot more to appreciate and a lot of contempt to shed in our in our lives. You know, yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question entirely, maybe. Yeah. But
It's
thank
yeah, a complicated question,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah. And really what you're doing, I think, is a new application or new approach to material culture as well, which maybe brings a lot of these categories all together without some of these hierarchies that
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like, and even, I mean, I would say, I said it at the beginning,
oh no, I think you've
a lot of philosophy about philosophy, but it's not about, can you hear me? Yeah.
we're
Start
okay.
again.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of philosophy is about philosophy. So a lot of philosophers write about other philosophers. Um, and then every now and then, you're like gobsmacked by a philosopher who writes something that you feel like, wow, this is about everyday life. So I think that ideally, those epistemologies and those, that's what I want to do with the book. I want to, say, pull people back into the act of reverie, and kind of write an art history that connects them closer to their everyday life experiences. Not say you're wrong about art or you're wrong about craft or, you know, so many people. I mean, I love the phrase material culture, but that too is something that some people say, oh, that's an ugly term or ungainly, or it's not. I don't know. I mean, I don't mind being called a decorative arts historian, an art historian, a craft historian, a design historian. Um, it's all about whether we talk about, you know, rich objects that hold rich history, or that really, send relevant, urgent messages about, that are culturally significant, right?
We have a question about what got you interested in all of this. You mentioned communal vessels were the origin of this book 15 years ago. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And even uh, it does seem like there's a lot of applications to other object types with what
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And I don't think, I mean, I think that this isn't a book just for potters, let's say. Or, I think I could have written a book about benches in a sense, or shawls, pants. I mean, there are many ways you could
And
write such a
hands are
book.
less communal.
Yeah. So, um, but people do relate to like a pair of dungarees of Levi's in some in deep way. I mean, you've got James Dean's and Marilyn Monroe's are considered icons of American culture. Um, and we have this idea of a work ethic being bound into. Um, so, I mean, in some ways, maybe a more personal way to kind of explain this is that I was rummaging through an old desk of papers, and I came across a letter I received from the M&M Mars Company back when I was 12. I wrote to the M&M company asking them how they coated M&Ms so evenly and perfectly, because I consider them beautiful objects and to be glazed in a certain way with beautiful colors and to be painted. Uh, and they wrote back to me that it was proprietary information that they couldn't share. But I think that kind of like engagement with tactile objects is something that goes, that's who I am in terms of a design, art, craft historian, um, I encounter these things, I touch these things, whether it's at IKEA or at an antique stall, and then I think, let's write about these things that I've touched, and those are the things that excite me to write about. I've never, some artists write to me and say, "Can I send you 10 slides and will you write an essay for me about my work?" And I say, "Well, I really only write about things I go and look at, and touch." And I think and for me, I need that kind of direct engagement with with the material world. I can't imagine writing from JPEGs, digital images. Yeah.
And we've had some comments just in support of your approach to touch and advocacy for that. Myra Moonlich Gray, who's represented in the book, is with us, and she asks, did you intend to tease out a connection to Design Within Reach in the subtitle? And does In Reach make any connection to value?
Yeah, I think I did have that pun in mind. Art within reach is design, which is I mean, for most of us, design within reach is design just out of reach. It's a little too expensive. Um, and the second part of the question was,
Could the connection to, does In Reach make any connection to value?
yeah, yeah, and I think I don't know if Myra was out there, but I think that the fact that we can touch most things devalues them in our society. And that's a kind of paradox. I think that answers the question, but maybe I'm not hearing it right. But I think that you know, we should value the things we can touch, and therefore, by making art history, within our own personal cupboard, we might move away from thinking about being so worshipful of JPEGs of things that are far away that we haven't walked into. Um, uh, it's not as crazy as it sounds, right? I mean, it's almost more crazy to kind of to 80% of the things um, be objects that are so obscure or hard to get to. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but arguably, there are many objects in the book that are not really that accessible to most of us.
Like what? In my book?
Well, yeah, I mean, not all of us have classical antiquities in our homes. Um,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's so I mean like this is something that this I guess this is what you're referring to, the Skyphos. Yes and no. I mean, I think that I think that there are like I mean or this object I mean these are out there and they're kind of it's ridiculous. Not all of us have antiquities in our home, but like this is a kind of a jug that I moved at the Brooklyn Museum of Art that's in the book. And part of the book is are things that I've touched as an art handler working on the installation crew and museums. Um, but in terms of we live in this moment where everyone does these like land acknowledgments, but the fact of the matter is that most MFA students sell their pots for 3 times the cost that you can buy something like this at auction, because you can still buy antiquities at auction for 100, 200, 300, $400. You might not grow up with that Chypriot Skyphos in your house, but you can easily acquire one for much less than you can, buy a round trip plane ticket to Europe. So it's all about priorities and values and more than I think taste. But I mean, that's my personal experience is where I started with. Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky, I think, to have this experience growing up where I did with the people growing up in New York City in the 1970s was very rich in terms of material resources and access. But that's why I'm sharing it in the book. so everyone can have it, you know? Yeah.
A question about from Monica McKenna about any objects, pictures that didn't make it into the book that you could share.
Sure. I had something sitting around my house. Uh, I'll get up in a little bit. Well, I mean, I will say there were contemporary artists and contemporary makers, whatever you want to, I mean, they might, however they define themselves, whose work I wanted to include, um, but who said, oh, that might look like a face jug that I make, but in fact, it's art. It's not pottery. I don't want it to be in your book. um, because so these old categories do weigh heavily still today. And I was sad, it was someone who I was acquainted with for over a dozen years and I've known professionally and worked with them. I was kind of shocked. I was like, and she said, well, it doesn't have a bottom. My jug doesn't have a bottom, and therefore it's not functional, and it shouldn't be in your book. But I think that many of these objects were talismans, were, you know, and life is not that evenly divided, or kind of objects don't behave so simply. What is an icon in one culture could be functional in another culture, or vice versa. Something that is functional but could become something that's worshipped. Uh, so here is a jug that I purchased on eBay again, um, and it's an image of it's a racist caricature, the image, even though it might not register with you, but it's an image of someone. It's called, an image that was on much sheet music, and the song was "Jump Jim Crow." Um, so it's an image of a man, Daniel Rice, who performed this dance and this caricature in blackface. So, right, with suit on his face. Uh, um, is it it's in some ways a representation that's toxic, but it is representation of a kind of international flow of ideas and images in the 19th century, which you could say, still happens with television or the internet today. Um, and it's interesting. I really bought it because I was teaching a class on the banjo as American material culture. And this made in England jug with an image of an American performer is a fascinating object and kind of collision of kind of questions. So, um, like, I'm interested in objects like this that are like, it's explosive, even if it might look inert or calm to you, but it's potent, I think, on so many levels. And some things like this, I didn't want to put that in the book because it is toxic in a sense. Um, some things I think you have to say, no, I'm not going to represent this again or publish this. So there are lines you draw with different criteria depending on the stories and the people and the places. Yeah.
We have a last question. Actually, Rachel Gottlieb read my mind in terms of the verbiage between jug and pitcher. And I was wondering this as well, or pot, or jar. And then you delve a little bit into cups. How do you distinguish
Yeah. Yeah.
vessels?
So in England, people would use the term jugs, like um, I think in America that a title like that might get me in trouble more. uh, uh, Here in Boston, when I told people I was writing a book about pitchers, they were sure I was writing about baseball. So I mean, this verbiage, you can look at the verbiage in our small world, or you can look at it in the big problematic world. So jugs and pitchers, um, uh, are they different? I addressed this a little bit in the book. The French word, for carafe. Where's a carafe and what's a beaker? I mean, bichet is pitcher. But we use the term beaker, and we would never think of drinking out of a beaker at our table. Um, Although I have seen, then again, those hard and fast rules are broken. I've seen this used at the dining room table and at the flower stall, right? So this IKEA jug, um, can be a child's play hat. So when is it a pitcher and when is it a jug for the child? I don't know. Uh, I think that more importantly for me, I mean, there are certain art historians who focus on these differences and distinctions. Um, but to me, to question those distinctions of jug, pitcher, beaker, carafe, it's almost like, is it art? Is it design? Is it craft? Uh, it doesn't necessarily spark the next conversation we have to have, which is, should we talk about it? Is it important? Is it enduring? Is it problematic still? Is it unsettling in a curious way? Those are the questions that I really think we have to ask, or that are urgent to ask. Yeah,
Perfect. Well, thank you. We
my pleasure.
hour. This is incredible. Everybody has so much to delve into through the pages of this book. And I hope this will lead to future explorations. Is that, I suppose, as we close, any thoughts of next book? I mean, I really do think it's a model potentially for looking at all kinds of object typologies. Um, but you might close this chapter, no pun intended, with this book. Um,
Um, no, I mean, I think you do kind of write things out of your system to some degree, and but I'm still going to be teaching these objects. I am working on a basketry exhibition that's going to open in 2029 at the Museum of Arts and Design, and uh, and also I'm trying to revise a book um, about John McQueen. Do we want to call him an artist, basket maker, sculptor? We can figure that out together. So those are two projects I'm working on. But those questions of if anyone thinks that craft is stepped upon, go look at the history of basketry for like a victim of modern capitalism that's gone, and also that's been mistreated by art critics, by art institutions and art academies. Find me an art academy that lets you major in basketry, and I'll give you $10. Yeah.
Solid points. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for tuning in, joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Yep. And feel free to email me if you got more questions,
And
or if you think I didn't answer a question. Thank
okay.
you.